Welcome, wrestling friends, to a special edition of Smarknado. I'm your host, Eric Druckman. With me, as always, the Danaconda, Dirty Dan says it. Dan, how you doing today?
Like every middle-aged white dude in America, I'm living the dream.
Absolutely, and I know you don't mean that, and no one ever really does when you say that. But joining us today is a guest that you're most likely familiar with in his time in WWE ECW. He's one of the most active names on the United States independent circuit for last 10 years, over 10 years. Friday, October 27th, Pro Wrestling Grind Celebration Day 2, we will be sponsoring him as he will be making his grind debut against A-Game Joseph Alexander. Please welcome the extremely cute wrestler, Colin Delaney. Colin, how are you doing today, man?
Hello, I'm doing good, guys. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Thanks for sponsoring me. I'm excited.
Yes, very excited.
We're excited too, man. I'll get to it later, but I do feel like us chatting is definitely a long time coming. But first and foremost, as we ask every guest on the show first, what was your earliest memories of pro wrestling, and who did you enjoy watching as a kid?
Oh man. So a lot of my early memories of life are pro wrestling, honestly. I was a guy who in school when they ask you what you want to be when you grow up, I said pro wrestler, and it just never changed from that.
That's awesome.
I remember watching wrestling before I could read. I remember having my older brother have to read the nameplates underneath who was like coming out or who was in the ring to tell me what was going on. I remember my parents letting me stay up late to watch the very first episode of Monday Night Raw. I could only watch the first hour because, I had to get to bed.
Yeah.
But,
you missed the killer main event, dude. Damian DeManto against against Undertaker.
I have since gone back and watched it, and my parents were wise to put me to bed.
I don't know if it holds up. I don't think it does.
To be honest, none of those early Raw, like the first 10, there's maybe two watchable matches on any of them. And they back to who I really enjoyed. I was a big Bret Hart guy, and I was a big Mr. Perfect guy. That's my favorite match of all time is Bret Hart, Mr. Perfect from SummerSlam. So in those first 10 or so episodes of Raw, I'd say Mr. Perfect and or Bret Hart are probably in the only watchable matches you'll find. Maybe Shawn Michaels.
Oh yeah,
that's a good chunk of that whole era, realistically. For in-ring content.
Yes, yeah. If you're trying to watch the matches and enjoy them, yeah, you're looking at a handful of guys. They had some stuff going on, but in those early Raw days,
getting on TV trying to entertain people wasn't quite the same as in-ring content.
Doink had some bangers though, man. Especially in those early Raws, he was throwing it sometimes.
Against Brett, I believe. Didn't they have he had a really good one against 1-2-3 Kid.
Yeah, there was. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. There's but most of the stuff you watch on those early Monday Night Raws,
not great.
So,
absolutely. So, I was going to ask this, but I think you kind of already beat us to it. I was basically like, what was your watershed moment where you wanted to be a professional wrestler? I think it kind of has always been with you.
Just always, man. I mean, the second I was like, and to go even whatever about it, like my parents wouldn't let me start training until I was 16. Mm-hmm. But I would go to shows. I started taking down and setting up rings when I was like 12 or 13. And back in this is like 2000. Nowadays you see a lot more young kids around helping out and doing what they can and wanting to get involved. But back then it was me. I would travel the road with whoever would let me in the car. I backyard wrestled with Brody Lee, so he started training before me.
Yeah.
So once he got on the road, I was like, let me come with you. Yeah, as a 13, 14-year-old kid.
That's fantastic, man. And you actually just beat me to one of the questions I was going to ask you because
I'm sorry, I'm going to stop answering with so much detail. I'm going to rein it in, much smaller answers.
It's all right, man. This is definitely obscure. Trust me.
Yes.
Wanted to mention around like 2003, 2004, I was in high school in Albany. And there was an independent wrestling show that was going on in Schenectady, New York, called Future Stars Pro Wrestling. And I remember going there, and me and my buddy were there. We remember that there's this skinny kid with a bow tie that was on commentary. That was you. And there was
That's
a
me.
wrestler that came out to "You Give Love a Bad Name," and that was Huber Boy 2.
Yeah, that's right, because he was a member of the Vanilla Thrillers.
Vanilla Thrillers.
The Vanilla Thrillers. That was he had a little squad with a couple others. They were the Vanilla Thrillers.
Oh,
wow! That was
Okay.
the. I still remember.
That didn't really catch on like the Too Sweet.
Yeah. Well, then there was a bunch of the other dudes who were all clicked up.
Who were all what?
Clicked up.
Gotcha.
Yeah, man. And actually, this is actually one of the first times Eric had mentioned you to me specifically, because he had mentioned that he had seen this way back in the day. And I'll be honest, like there was a spell where I wasn't watching or whatever, but he goes, there's this guy, Colin Delaney. And I go, okay, like sounds like a guy. He goes, no, man, he looks exactly like you. So the running joke that Eric was speaking about is that I am officially Colin Delaney, and you are officially, Dan Cesnat, right? When you had debuted on AEW, they're like, dude, you got to see him. You got to see him. Like this dude looks exactly like you. And then I felt bad for you because you're clearly more handsome than I am. And so the other day I go, yeah, we have this interview coming up, and I tell my wife about it. And I go, all the guys, they think I look just like him. And just so you know, she did not scoff at that. So all you gentlemen are welcome. She goes, I can see it. So my wife thinks I'm also extremely cute. So I just want to put that out there. From not knowing who you were to my wife thinking we are similar looking is the story of Dan Cesnat and Colin Delaney.
I see it. I can see it. I see the resemblance. I was told for a very long time, especially when I first cut my hair short and grew a beard, that I looked a lot like Bryan Danielson. I got it a lot once I cut the hair and got the beard, but I actually got it once before that on the bus going to WrestleMania. I sat next to William Regal, and he just turns over and looks at me and asks me if anyone ever told me I look like Bryan Danielson. And at that point, no. Because I had the long hair. I was a kid. I was thin and no beard, and so no, nobody ever had. And then I cut my hair, grew a beard, and then I got it everywhere. It was all the time.
So you are technically a founding member of the Blackpool Combat Club.
In theory,
yes.
Yeah. I think on the very first Wrestling Road Diaries that Colt Cabana did, Danielson was on there, and we were on a show together, and we mentioned it on that
no shit.
Wrestling Road Diaries, and we did a little side-by-side comparison. I don't totally see it, I guess, from a side profile.
Maybe a little bit.
I see a little bit of it.
Hey, man.
I guess, but
we're all handsome dudes. Let's just put it that way.
That's it, man.
We're just a bunch of handsome dudes.
I'll say this: you and Danielson both have amazing babyface fire. So I do see the resemblance there.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did want to circle back on, Huber Boy 2. Just wanted you to talk about your memories of him, and who are some of the other people that assisted you in your development, becoming a professional wrestler.
Yeah, so John, like I said, John and me backyard wrestled together. I make the joke that we backyard wrestled together when I was 12 and he was 35. But he was like 19. He was quite a bit older than me, and I was 12 or 13. I think he had 6 years on me. But yeah, so I linked up with a backyard group, and John eventually became a part of it. And then a lot of the guys decided they wanted to actually try to train and go somewhere and do something with it. My older brother, Ed, he went to train at a school. John did, and some of the other guys we backyarded with. So I unfortunately was like 14 at the time. My parents wouldn't let me start. I had to kind of sit back and watch them. But I really learned a lot just being around it all the time for those couple years. And then when I started training at the local school here. And by that point, guys like John and like my eventual tag partner, Jimmy Olsen, they were already trained up and ready. So those guys really helped me come along quickly. In addition to guys like Dunn and Marcos, the Ring Crew Express, who
God.
I had the pleasure of traveling the roads with and training with. I tell people all the time, I probably learned more from Dunn and Marcos than anybody. They were the guys in the local Rochester area who were actually out there doing it. So, we all kind of wanted to be like them.
Yeah. God, it's just, that's a name. Those are names I haven't heard in so long. And I was like an OG Ring of Honor fan too. And I always wanted to see more out of them. I saw it in them when I like saw in the Young Bucks when I first saw them.
Dude, they were so good.
They were so exciting.
Ring of Honor didn't really let them flourish. I mean, a lot like my WWE time, like unbelievable, undeniable opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, there's still a lot of people out there who are like, oh yeah, the kid who just can get thrown around and beat up and doesn't wrestle much. I feel the same way about Dunn and Marcos. It was like, oh yeah, the guys who came out real quick and did a couple moves, like they never really got a good chance to like show how good they are and were. And Kevin and Mark were unbelievable.
I was lucky enough that at that time too, CZW was posting some of their shows online, so I was able to see some of the longer form matches of Dunn and Marcos. And I totally agree with you. They did really get to cook in Ring of Honor.
They were a lot of places at that time because Ring of Honor was using them. So then other places would book them, like CZW, Jersey All Pro, IWC. And there is a lot of good stuff out there, but there wasn't as much access back then. You know, if they were around in the era that we are in now, where like every show is streamed somewhere, people would have been like, "Oh man, Dunn and Marcos, they'd be
like no slouches generation right now."
Yeah, right. Because everyone, they see him on Ring of Honor, but then they look at these other shows and be like, "Oh no, wait a second."
Exactly. So in your WWE ECW run, I know it's been covered to death, but just briefly just talk to us about how that came about. Who were some of your favorite people to work with as well?
So back to Brody. He was backstage doing just extra work like everybody does at some point in their lives if you're a pro wrestler of any kind of level. And they needed a smaller guy to get beat up that night by Shelton. So he called me and I went down, and kind of the rest is history. Because like you said, the story has been told to death. But literally that was what it was. I got to the building. Jamie Noble is like dragging me down the hallway, introducing me to everybody. They say, "You swear to God you can work, kid. You swear to God you can work." And I'm just going, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." Although at the time I was like, "I don't know, man. Maybe. I think so."
Right. Am I sure I can work? Like I thought I could.
Right. Until this moment, I didn't really question it. But now that I'm being taken down a hallway by Jamie Noble and potentially going to wrestle on TV, I'm not sure. But yeah, so I wrestled Shelton, and they really liked it. And everyone shook my hand. They gave me a big bonus. And then Johnny Ace asked me what I was doing next week. And it just kind of rolled from there and was like the craziest 9 months of my life, traveling around. Yeah, man, traveling all around, flying to places I never thought I'd ever go in general, and still places that I'll probably never go back to, like Iowa, and no offense, Iowa.
I mean, no, nobody wants to. They're called flyover states for a reason, man. Like you're not hurting anybody's feelings. I don't think.
Over there,
yeah. I think we went to a Hooters down a dirt road, so it's not a whole lot. But yeah, it was a crazy time, and I don't know. I was 21, but I always tell people I was a kid because, I mean, I was a kid. I was never done much in life at that point up until then, other than random indies around the Pennsylvania, Ohio, Massachusetts, you know, like I was a
The Northeast
kid.
scene. Yeah.
So I, you know, then flying all around the country every week it was crazy. And as far as guys I got to work with, man, so many, and everybody was so cool. Everybody was so awesome. Like I can't remember well, I can't remember one person who was not like super cool. Like, I mean, clearly the great Kali beat the shit out of me, but it
Have
doesn't
you
mean that he
recovered?
wasn't. It doesn't mean that he wasn't super nice.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like every time I'd pass him in the hallway, you Colin, me Kali, ha ha ha, and he just thought it was funny. He was super nice.
That's amazing.
You
Oh,
know, and
man.
all
Sometimes
these
you hear the nightmares of people that go through these, short stints at on the highest level. And it's refreshing to hear you say that, everybody was nice. It was a good experience. Like and as somebody that from the top of the interview, you said this was kind of what you wanted to do from jump, right? So to be at that highest level, at something that, you know, when you say you want to be the president when you're a kid, you're probably not going to be the president. But if you say you want to be a professional wrestler and you want to get to WWE and you get to, that's awesome, man. And I'm glad that it was a good experience for you.
It was, man. Everybody, like I said, everybody was cool. Everybody was super nice. Everybody, I don't know, like very few people were dicks. You hear a lot of stuff. Like I wrestled JBL one on one, and you hear horror stories. I was,
Yeah.
I was scared to death, but he couldn't have been cooler. Like I don't know. I don't
Okay.
really have any, yeah.
That's
super,
awesome.
super duper
Did
cool.
you meet the
I
big
mean,
man?
oh yeah, for sure. He was allegedly, as the story goes, when I'm in the ring wrestling Shelton Benjamin, he's in the earpiece to anybody with an earpiece, being like, "Oh, that's how you sell. That's how you bump. Who is this kid? Hey, who is this kid?" And so he was Vince was a big fan of mine. That's really why I got hired, because he liked what he saw. Like
That's amazing.
my first week when they brought me back, the first thing they said to me was that they were going to change my last name because no one gets to keep their actual name.
Yeah.
But then later that day, they were like, "I guess Vince likes it, so we're just going to keep it."
Oh, okay. So that's your real name.
Yeah, Colin Delaney is my real name. Strong Irish name.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
Yeah, a strong Irish lad. Yeah, no, that's excellent. Again, it's just such a cool story to hear. Like,
Yeah.
just you wanted to do it your whole life, and getting to do it at so many different kind of levels and in so many different kind of ways, right? Is
Yeah,
just
man.
an
I
incredible story.
just November will be 20 years since my first match.
So how about this? Who out there in independent wrestling land wants to book Shelton Benjamin versus Colin Delaney 2 now that he's a free agent?
Oh,
That's
shit.
what
Bring
I'm
it on.
saying.
Bring
That's
it
what I'm
on.
saying. I'm calling for it now.
Hey, Rip
Yeah,
Bison,
I'm in.
if you're listening, why not?
Shell out that money.
Shelton's still so good. He's still
Yeah.
so good.
He really is.
Like
Yeah.
he was an experienced dude when I wrestled him. He had already been around for a bit when he worked me. And now you just think he's still just as good. That dude can
man.
still go. Man, those
That's
world's greatest tag team matches.
absolutely incredible.
My
Yeah,
God. Yeah.
he's a freak of nature when it comes to in ring work. It's just
The gold
it's
standard.
unparalleled in so many ways.
I'd love to see him back in Japan, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. Yeah. I mean, while he is still so good, I'm not sure his body wants to take that Japan punishment anymore. But
Maybe
hey,
just
maybe.
one more G1. Just
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
one.
But like,
Yeah.
you heard what Danielson said recently, right? Like, he would love
Yeah.
to do a G1. He just doesn't think it's like responsible of him to do it.
No, I mean his neck
I can
is
see that.
when you know yourself, you know yourself, and that's commendable because truly, that's something that I'm sure he, as a wrestler, and I can say this with confidence, has probably wanted to do his entire life.
His
And
entire life.
to say I probably shouldn't do it as a dad myself, you do things that you think differently once you get to that point, right? So it's a nice thing to see that even though he can't do that, he's still putting on fucking humpers every single week, no matter what.
Right.
So, Colin, coming out of your WWE run, which very positive, I'm sure a lot of shoot interview people and kayfabe commentaries don't like that you don't have any juice. We like it. We think it's refreshing. Your mindset coming out of the WWE run, did you have a chip on your shoulder? Did you feel a need to like reinvent yourself at all once you got out there?
Once again, man, I got hired at 21 and fired at 21.
Yeah.
I still, I didn't really have enough time away from the indies to totally separate myself from it in general. Anyways, I hopped right back into a lot of what I was doing, but kind of in more prominent roles.
Yes.
I don't know. I guess I there is part of me that kind of wishes that I did change things, but I don't know. It was 2008. It was the landscape wasn't like it is now. The scene wasn't like it is now. Like you heard, Cardona's killing it on the indies, and he put out that thing when all those people got released. Like, hey, there's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of, and it's like, he's right. And it does make me reflect and think what I would have done differently. And I don't know necessarily what it would have been, but yeah, I mean, I kind of just went back to what I knew with the people that I enjoyed doing it with. And yeah, back to I wrestled the day I got fired. I got fired on a Friday morning. I wrestled that night in Canada.
Oh, that's killer.
Yeah, no 90, no my
Do you
no
remember
compete
who the
clause.
opponent was?
I do. So my I remember vividly that my no compete clause was only for TNA and Ring of Honor, essentially. And I was like, okay, well, that shouldn't be a problem, I guess. But yeah, it was for this promotion, UWA Hardcore, which used to run killer shows up in the Toronto area. And they were having their last show ever that night. So I got fired, cried for like 4 hours. And I called Brody and I was like, hey, man, you think if I came along tonight, they'd let me wrestle? And he was like, duh. So I got in the car with them. We got to the show. And I wrestled with my old tag partner, Jimmy, against Cloudy and Cheech.
Oh, shit.
We had wrestled a bunch of times the day I got fired.
So how appropriate that that's who your opponents were that night.
It wasn't supposed to be. It was they had me. I got there and they were like, oh, hey, we'll just throw you into this match and make it a 3-way. And it was supposed to be Cloudy against Cheech. And I think Jimmy was wrestling Brody. And we were like, why don't we just make that a tag match and let Brody do something else? I think Jimmy actually still wrestled Brody in the opener. And then we called a tag match after that.
Yeah. Awesome, man. So To Infinity and Beyond has been your tag team for a number of years. You guys are still teaming, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Originally, I think they wanted the two of us for this grind show, but Cheech is busy that day.
Yeah. So I started seeing you guys when I got IWTV, AIW was on there, so I was watching a lot of you guys in PME and a lot of really awesome matches. So basically, origin story. How did this team come about? And what are your overall thoughts of teaming with Cheech?
So how it came about, I don't totally even know. It was something we kind of joked about because my old tag. So it used to be there was the Upstate Five was what we called ourselves. Me, Jimmy, Brody, Cloudy, Cheech, because we were the ones who came out of Rochester and we traveled everywhere. We were the Upstate Five, and then Brody's off on TV. Jimmy stopped wrestling, and Cloudy was kind of not really doing it anymore. And me and Cheech were still active. So we joked that we should start teaming as just the other guys, And then AIW kind of paired us up, not more as like a group with Dick Justice, because Dick is a guy who I helped train. He's also a Rochester, New York guy, and Cheech also Rochester.
I miss him so much, by the way. Like
My guy. He just wrestled. He wrestled for the first time in a long time recently at Wild Zero here in Syracuse.
oh no shit.
Yeah. It was great. He stopped wrestling. He's doing like powerlifting stuff now. He looks great. It's crazy.
Yeah. I follow him on social media. Yeah.
But so we essentially, me and Cheech got paired together in this group with Dick, not initially as a team necessarily, just in a kind of a group with him, and then we were the two out of the groups to get paired for like an 8-man tag, and then we just kind of kept rolling with it, and that's it. Like it wasn't some crazy whatever. It just kind of out of circumstance and happenstance, and now at this point me and him have been teaming longer than me and Jimmy teamed, and longer than him and Cloudy teamed combined.
Oh, shit. That's wild too. Yeah, I remember Cheech and Cloudy, correct me if I'm wrong, weren't they? They were in Special K, right? Ring of Honor.
Yeah, they started in Special K. Cheech's wrestling like history, like he has to have the wackiest cage match profile of all time. Because I'm pretty sure his very first match, or his debut match, was the scramble cage at Ring of Honor with Dusty Rhodes in it.
Oh wow, that's his first match ever.
Yeah, right, correct.
Wow.
Because Cloudy and Cheech were both trained by Tony DeVito, so they became Special K kids, and then they were Lacey's Angels. But yeah, his first match, I'm pretty sure, is scramble cage.
Jesus.
Good God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check out that cage match profile.
Essentially, Cheech's debut opponent is Dusty Rhodes.
That's called quitting while you're ahead, right? Like
Yeah,
just wrestle
right?
that match and just retire, right? Like I
You can
wrestled
only go
with
down
Dusty.
from there.
No.
I remember I was in the South, and I was in a match against Tony Falk, and Tony Falk's claim to fame was he was Jeff Jarrett's first opponent, and I was like, man, that's wild, man.
Wow.
And the fact that I'm wrestling Jeff Jarrett's first opponent is not lost on me.
That's I mean, what was that, 1936?
Yes, right. I wrestled the dude like 6 years ago.
Yeah, that's I mean, Jeff Jarrett's body of work, a lot of people can say what they want to say about him, but man, like it's hard to not be impressed by it rather.
He has to be top 5 most underrated all time. Has to be.
I think I could probably agree with you in many retro. Like, I don't necessarily want him clouding up much of my TV time in the year of our Lord 2023, but I do enjoy his body of work in general.
I'll say,
and I'll give him some of my TV time in 2023.
Sure. I don't think you should be getting a title match every week, but I do think that when I was a kid, I was watching WCW Nitro, and he was coming out with the flowing blonde hair and that stupid ass striped white outfit. There's no one I wanted to see get their ass kicked more. And because no one that would get more under my skin as a kid. So I think that really does say something.
Here's where my argument for Jeff Jarrett comes. Not to take us off on a crazy tangent.
Yeah. I love tangents. I'm the tangent guy.
Where do you put Jeff Jarrett all time on an all-time list? He's not top 10, right? That it would be very tough to put him anywhere near that. And then you go and you're like, is he top 50? You probably, I would say yes, but there are people who would say no. And that makes me go, no way. Brother's one of the most underrated dudes of all time.
There is an argument to be made for him in the top 50. Absolutely.
I would agree.
For sure. But there are people out there who wouldn't even put him, who wouldn't even have him sniffing it.
That's why, it's arguable.
Yeah.
But number one most underrated wrestler of all time is Kurt Angle, and I don't think that's debatable.
Underrated?
Oh yeah.
I see personally, I rate him very highly. Like to me, he's a top 10 all-timer to me.
See, and I agree with you, but I think there's a lot of people who would slide him into that next bracket, because the top 10 for a lot of people gets clouded up real fast with the Ric Flairs, the Bret Harts, the Shawn Michaels, the Hogans, whoever you happen to put in your top 10, but it gets clouded up with those guys real fast. So Kurt Angle sometimes doesn't scratch it, but who is any guy who Kurt Angle had a program with, you can make an argument that he's their best opponent ever. And if you try to say who's Kurt Angle's best opponent ever, I don't know, because there's so many of them.
Percocet. But all kidding aside,
banged.
But all kidding aside, I think what works against Kurt is some of his strongest years were TNA, and a lot of people weren't watching that like WWE. I think that's what hurt him really badly, and it was great stuff. And I think that's what sort of knocks him down on a peg, because a lot of people will be like, yeah, I'll put Undertaker in my top 10. Nah, like, I'm sorry, no, Kurt Angle is there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but that's because of the longevity with one place.
Yes, yeah, I think exactly. So, when people rate, they rate for various reasons. That's why all these lists are a little
so subjective.
They're wrestling's such a crazy subjective thing, as is. So when you try to list things, but like, come on, Shawn Michaels has a crazy storied career. His greatest opponent may be Kurt Angle.
Yeah,
that's bonkers. Rey Mysterio, one of the greatest of all time. Who's his best opponent? It's probably Kurt Angle. Eddie Guerrero, it might be Kurt Angle. Samoa Joe, it might be Kurt Angle. Like I keep going back to it, which always makes me go, man, might be Kurt Angle. He might, I think he's the most underrated all time.
He should have on more Rushmores when people give him out Rushmores of wrestling.
Exactly. You don't. How many do you see Kurt Angle on? In general, like people are like, oh, few. Rock, Flair,
the idea of a top 4 in what is arguably the most subjective art form in the history of the world is hard.
Also, who decided that those dudes on Mount Rushmore are the 4 best presidents? I didn't decide.
Exactly. I didn't decide.
I don't think they are.
They might not be. But yeah, exactly. I think Eric is getting we're sidetracking.
Oh, sorry.
He's got all these questions. I love it. I said
this discussion, guys. I mean,
I'm the tangent guy, Colin. Don't worry.
For Christ's sakes. So, Colin, who are some tag teams that you've worked with that people should be checking out right now? Specifically, matches you've worked with as Infinity and Beyond.
So I was talking to someone about this the other day. The tag team scene in the Northeast, especially, is nuts.
Yeah,
it's nuts. Wrestling Open puts out a show every week, and every week there's the Brick City Boys are crazy good. Miracle Generation are crazy good. So there's a ton of tag teams coming up who are all crazy good. Waves and Curls are great. We talked about PME earlier. PME they're everywhere. They kind of run the tag team scene in a lot of places, and well deserved.
Yeah, they've expanded out of Cleveland. I know they're in St. Louis now, right?
Yeah, they're in St. Louis. I see them up here in Syracuse. They're running a pretty full schedule. I think I saw them on something in Canada. They're everywhere, man, and well deserved. But there are a ton of tag teams. The main event who's on the show, oh my god, so good. And then the main event from Pittsburgh, Duke and Gannon,
I know,
also crazy good, man.
They look like
it's just
football players,
and they are, and they're strong as all get out.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I always love tag team wrestling. So it makes me very happy that the tag team scene in indie wrestling is thriving.
Do you prefer tag team wrestling to singles wrestling?
Yes, usually, typically. I mean, I love singles wrestling. I love being creative on my own, but not to use an old Mike Quackenbush line, but the tag team wrestling gives you more colors to paint with. Okay. There's only so much you can do with just one other person. There's a lot more you can do with 3 other people. Okay. So, yeah, I prefer it. I think there's a lot more fun that can be had with it.
Cool.
That's great. So, in your realm as a singles wrestler, who would you credit as giving you your best match, and who are some of your favorite people to work against?
Man, I've been at this a very long time. Man. So I've been doing a lot of tag team wrestling over the last, 6 or 7 years for sure. So my tag team wrestling is not, or my singles resume is not as full in recent
you
years.
can give your favorite or your best match as a tag team too, if you'd like.
Okay, man. There's a lot. I don't know, but yes and no. I'm not one of those guys who really watches a lot of my stuff back. I kind of I study other things and I watch other people more than I watch myself. I'm trying to think of some recent ones that I was especially proud of. Me and Cheech had a series of matches with Private Party right before they got scooped up by AEW that were really, really good and really a lot of fun. We had some really fun ones with Bear Country before they got scooped up too. It was a joke in this area that every time we'd wrestle somebody, they were signed by AEW in a matter of months. But both those teams, crazy good. But we had a super fun one with the main event, the Midas and Lion version at ESW. We've had some really good ones at ESW over the last couple of years. ESW here in Buffalo.
Yeah, that's it's a promotion I haven't watched too much of, but I know my familiarity with the Northeast scene. I know it's just a lot of the same people, but there's a few that I was introduced to, but like I know Blackwoods came from there, and like Garcia and all those Grapplers Anonymous guys, right?
Yeah, they all are, came up through ESW. ESW just in the area in upstate New York really positions themselves ahead of pretty much everybody.
I would say so too, man. And you know what? Like, as somebody that is in upstate New York and Albany, I can honestly say, and it's not a slight on like any of the talents that are around here, but like I go to Western Massachusetts for a reason. I like travel out there because it's just this upstate New York indie scene is dead. Like there really isn't a lot that's like, I don't know what needs to happen for it to be, I would say be revived, but I don't even know if it was ever like alive.
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was first coming up locally, it felt like every weekend I was on cool shows somewhere around here. Like here in Rochester, they used to bring in like AJ Styles and like Abyss and like all these crazy, we'd have these crazy cards with all these awesome dudes. And then
you guys were an NWA affiliate for a bit, weren't you?
NWA
that a big
upstate.
Reason why you guys were able to bring in like a lot of really good talents? Not so much.
It wasn't really because of that. I don't think. It was just I remember Kevin Dunn of the Ring Crew Express was helping book things at a point, which is why you would see a lot of Ring of Honor guys, which is why you'd see like Jay Lethal and Christopher Daniels and those types of guys get brought in. And then just, natural relationships would bring guys in, but it hasn't been like that in a long time. ESW is the only one really holding it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It seems like I wrestled recently for Immortal out Albany way, and they put on some pretty good shows. They had Richard Holiday on the last one. I really like Holiday. I had a killer singles with Holiday recently last year sometime. He is so good. But I appreciate when places try. It feels like locally, especially here in Rochester, nobody tries anymore. It's just like cash grab. They're just ticket seller, who care, dude's making some money off of whatever, so what does it matter, to bring in other talent to really promote the area, and it's just
it's more money grab than actual developing of a scene.
Yes, if anything, it's hurt the scene over the years, because what happens is, not to get too whatever about it, but get a class of students, train them just enough, have them sell 10 tickets to all their friends, now fill a card with a bunch of guys who are kind of trained, and
Mhm.
then have 10 people walk through the door and say, that was okay. And they never want to come back to a wrestling show.
Right.
And now,
Mhm.
how many wrestling fans can you really find in an area? They're all going to say, oh yeah, I went to an independent wrestling show and it was pretty meh, or it sucked, and they're not going to come back. And it's just been beaten over the head, at least here in Rochester, for so long that I'll be honest, I don't know how it recovers.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to your point, like from my experience with independent shows around this area too, it's always just that model of like bunch of unknown guys that you've never heard of, but then like one rando legend that's on it.
Right. And I'm all for pushing your own guys and promoting your own talent. Don't get me wrong, I am. But your talent's only going to be so good when it wrestles itself over and over and over again.
Right. So like for someone that has their finger on the pulse of the independent wrestling scene, I can tell like they're not really bringing in a lot of talents. Like, you know, even that
A lot of places.
it's sad to see.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. I know about it here because I am here, but I'm sure there's somebody in Ohio who has the same story about a place that used to be great around them that's not anymore, and so on and so forth until the end of time. But
luckily,
again,
I'm in Charlotte, so I get a lot of I get GCW that comes through once in a while. DPW is the hot new thing that's in the North Carolina area. Darius Lockhart's new promotion is starting up come December in this area. So like we're really being inundated down here right now.
But I bet you there's some people who have been around that Carolina scene for a long time who are like, oh yeah, this used to be awesome, but it got just beaten down by people who didn't care.
Right.
It's unfortunate, man.
It is what it is, but you know, at least from my perspective, traveling 2 hours to Worcester is 110% worth it.
And as a wrestler, I can't worry about all of that. I can only worry about doing what I can to make wrestling better on my end and where I have the opportunity to,
just be as entertaining as possible, right? And that's
That's
why
it, man.
that's how you get booked, right? Just be good at what you do and show up, and it's all gravy from there, man. It's just
I want to leave wrestling better than I found it, for sure, no questions. That's my goal at the end of the day. But sometimes you just can't help everybody, so you got to do what you can where you can and not waste time dwelling on the whatevers of others,
For sure. Excellent.
Totally agree. So, Colin, what are your goals over the next year in wrestling?
Oh, the next year. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Like I said, November will be 20 years since my first match. So,
fantastic.
Yeah. I guess I've had conversations with people recently, not that I'm winding down, but I do realize that I have more matches behind me than ahead of me. Mm-hmm. So enjoying myself, doing it at the high level I know I'm capable of, as long as I am capable of doing that. And yeah, trying to leave wrestling a little better than I found it. I try to help out when I come to shows. I try to work with young guys, talk to them, give advice if they want it. Help wherever I can when I come in. I don't just try to come in, wrestle, get paid, and go home. I try to help out wherever I go.
Would you open a school eventually, or train younger wrestlers at some point? Is that something you would be interested in doing?
So I've run a couple schools here over the years. Currently, we do have a school open, called Ground Zero. Myself, Cloudy, Cheech, Nick Ando, Maddock, Chris Worthless, just trying to make things better and give people a place to go that really cares about wrestling.
That's in Rochester.
That's in Rochester. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I lived in Rochester for a whole 3 months, and I won't say that it was the best 3 months of my life, but it wasn't the worst.
I was gonna say you haven't missed much, I'm sure.
Damn, weren't you in Syracuse though too?
I lived in Syracuse for 3 years, but I worked in Rochester for a few months. So
Syracuse is trip
Dump.
all in itself. Well, I didn't
No,
say that.
I said
say
it.
that.
I said it.
Okay.
It's fine. I spent 3 years there. I will never ever go back. It was. I mean,
Not
I'm in
even
the
for
South now.
Tully's, bro.
I've had
Tully's is good. Tully's
listen.
is good.
We have a Tully's here in Rochester.
Yep.
I've had some of the best matches of my career in Syracuse, so I can't say too much. One time, me, Cheech, and AR Fox wrestled the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega in Syracuse, New York, in a small, dumpy gym.
Is that
Jesus.
streaming anywhere?
I would love to watch a copy of that great
I would
video.
too.
I don't know if it's streaming anywhere. They packed about as many people as they could fit into this small gymnasium in Syracuse, New York, and
What
we
was the
just went
promotion?
bonkers. 2CW.
2CW. That definitely doesn't exist anymore. I know that.
No, and a shame because they used to put on crazy, crazy shows all the time, and they ran Syracuse, Binghamton, Watertown. But yeah, no, that was a match that happened in Syracuse. Me, Cheech, and AR Fox against the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega.
Good Lord, man. Who haven't you wrestled?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I've wrestled.
Move your pants, man.
Like I said, I wrestled the first opponent ever of Jeff Jarrett. Like,
yeah,
I've wrestled.
Your resume
I've wrestled...
is. I would say we've had a handful of guests on the show, and I feel like your resume is probably one of the more intriguing ones we've had so far. It's very. I love to hear it.
If you really dig into that thing, there's times where someone will mention something like, "Oh yeah, I did do that." Like, I remember one afternoon I signed autographs next to Butterbean in like North Jersey, and then drove 3 hours to South Jersey to wrestle Superfly Jimmy Snuka. And I was just like, what an odd life.
Yeah,
man,
for real.
That's a great you got it made, man. Like you're just doing it. Like for a dude that knew what he wanted to do from the beginning, you've definitely made a mark on the industry. You know. And that's just incredible.
That's it, man. I love it. I love wrestling. I've always loved wrestling. I probably always will love wrestling, and that's it. And it's still fun for me, and I still like doing it. And I don't like I said, I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. As long as these knees and elbows and shoulders stay okay.
Yeah.
Hey,
Colin, you look great right now, man.
Thanks, man. I'm trying.
As far as your career goes, like you looking.
I'm trying.
Jacked.
So a lot of those pictures are from like 2 years ago. I'm not that jacked anymore.
Okay.
Pandemic happened and I've softened up a bit. So now I almost hate when I see those articles. It's like, look what Colin Delaney looks like now, and I'm like, yeah, guys, relax. You're creating an expectation for me that I'm not sure I'm completely holding up.
Oh man. Well, we do have that as the promo photo for this interview. If that's okay
fine. No, that's great. Oh no, that's great. Keep it going. Just when you see me, if I look like I'm like 15 pounds heavier, then just mind your business.
Yeah.
Hey man, we're all 15 pounds heavier after COVID. We all have that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 37 now. Like, once 35ish hit, it was like, ooh, this is all this is a lot tougher. This weight's a lot tougher to take off.
Yes. 100%.
Yep, that's what 30 people gripe about when you turn 30. Nah, man, it's the 35 that gets you because you realize you're closer to 40.
I'm living in that year right now.
Yeah,
it's tough, bro.
Say that.
The body just doesn't respond as well anymore. It takes twice as much work to do half of the good.
You couldn't be more accurate with that. Couldn't be more accurate.
Colin, just close up here. What are some of your hobbies outside of wrestling?
Oh, I don't have any, man. Wrestling, I watch it, and I'm married now. I just got married back in May.
Congratulations.
So thank you. So yeah, I mean, just currently just enjoying my life.
Does your wife love wrestling?
My wife does love wrestling. Yeah.
Mine tolerates it.
I met my wife at a show when I was just out of WWE. And we didn't start dating until a couple years ago, but we still have this picture from the show that she met me at, where, and just a couple young kids,
That's
and
great.
now we're married.
Nice. Well, congratulations, man. That's awesome. Good for
Thanks. Yeah. Hell yeah.
That's awesome, man. So as I said at the start of the show, we're very proud to be sponsoring your match for Pro Wrestling Grind Celebration Day 2 in your debut against Joseph Alexander. So what should we be expecting from this match?
So I think I've only seen A Game one time so far. I've got a little time, so I will be studying up over the next week and a half or so.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, just my best. I'm gonna give it all I got. You talked about earlier how, like, did I feel like I had to reinvent myself after I left WWE? And it actually wasn't after WWE, but it was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years after that I went, man, there's still people out there who just go, oh, Colin Delaney, that kid who got thrown around on ECW. And it does kind of grind my gears a little bit, if I'm being honest,
Yes.
because I've done so much and I work really hard at it. And I really, you may not know this, but like growing up, like like I said, I like Mr. Perfect. I like Bret Hart. I was a big Dean Malenko fan. Like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to wrestle. And so there is still a part of me, especially when I go new places, that's like, there's at least one person out in that crowd that is going to come up to me and say, I watched you when I was a kid. And I need to make that person understand that I am a really good professional wrestler. it's
Well,
it's keeps me moving every day.
When I first heard about you, I didn't even know you had a WWE run, to be completely honest with you. I knew from Infinity and Beyond and whatnot, and the times I'd seen you on indies and being told by my friends that we looked alike. So, I didn't really know. So it's cool to sort of hear it from your perspective, having not really watched that run even really. Like, I'll be honest, I wasn't really into wrestling at that time. Like, I was a pre and then I was a lapsed fan until, a handful of years ago. But it's just very cool to know you from a different perspective that you sort of want to be known from. So that's great.
It drives me. It does. It drives me, and it's yeah. Every time, especially when I'm somewhere new, there's definitely someone in that. I think about it. I think about it in the back. I go, there's somebody out there that has never seen me wrestle before, and there's somebody out there who definitely only saw me on WWE, and I need to blow that person's mind. I got to do it.
I don't think that there's a better place for you to prove that point than Pro Wrestling Grind. I don't think that you're going to have a better, harder working dance partner than Joseph Alexander. Take it from me, who's seen him firsthand several times. I've been at Pro Wrestling Grind shows since the start, and he's one of my favorite people to watch. We mentioned
I'm very excited.
Kurt Angle earlier in the show. I see some Kurt Angle in him. Not saying like he's everything that Kurt Angle is, but you see a little bit of it. His throws are fantastic. I think he's gonna be a star.
Yeah, I'm definitely jealous I'm not making it up to the show down there. But if you come down to Carolina, I hope you do make your way down here at some point. You get booked on any of these shows, I will definitely make my way out to check it out for sure.
Hell yeah, man. I've wanted to come work for Grind for a minute. One of my best friends is Jay Freddy.
Awesome.
So, knowing him like I do.
And he's somebody also who, like, I didn't like. I got IWTV in like 2019, so I saw Jay Freddy on some shows. I didn't really see him in a lot of meaningful matches, so like he wasn't really someone that I necessarily had my eye on. But then when he started in Pro Wrestling Grind, he had longer form matches. I started to see just like his influence from All Japan Pro Wrestling and the way that he sells and like his move set and just everything that he does embodies pro wrestling, the spirit of Pro Wrestling Grind too.
He's an animal. The man's an animal.
He is. He really is. And I've just become such a big fan of Jay Freddy, and really, really nice guy too. I'll say
he's on his way back, man. He's rehabbing. I think he's only got a couple months left.
Yeah, as you know, we all hate Skyros. Skyros is very talented.
Skyros.
Very talented, but screw that guy. We want Jay Freddy back. Blue Thunder all the way.
Jay Freddy is our champion.
Yes.
No,
Forever.
Skyros is great, and Skyros is going to put on a heck of a match with Mikowski on that
Oh,
same show
yeah.
on Celebration
Dude,
Day too. So
I feel like every match they announce, I'm like, oh yeah, that's gonna be good. I feel like I'm gonna spend half the night watching.
I mean,
the whole
Griffin
thing is a
McCoy
thumper.
versus O'Shea Edwards. That's gonna be killer. Like that's a match I
O'Shea's
never even knew I wanted.
I'm
That's my
saying this
favorite.
right here, right now. Pro Wrestling Grind is arguably one of the hottest upcoming promotions in the Northeast, if not in the entire country, with some of the people they're starting to trickle into those shows, yourself included, man. Nothing but the hardest work from Rip and Delmy, to be honest with
I
you.
gotta say too, like last show, they usually have 8 matches. Last show they had 6 matches. Not the one that was at the RPM Fest, but the one before that. And so much more time in all the matches and killer. And I want them just to stick to that formula because there's so many indie shows that are out there that are like a 3-hour long marathon. You have to commit to watching it. But
it
they do
still
tight
happens.
little 2 hours, you know?
It still happens some places, but man, back in the day, those earlier 2000s when you show up to a show and you're like, oh great, I'm match 12 and I'm not even the main event. Can't wait to be here till 2 a.m.
Yeah.
For real, man. For real. Yeah, but we're really looking forward to sponsoring you, Colin. Thank you so much for your time. You were certainly
Dudes.
our favorite guest that we've ever had. Where can we find you online?
I'm not the most social media person, but I'm at Extremely Cute on Twitter. I got on that Twitter game early, so things like at Extremely Cute were still available. I always love to give the random fact about Twitter when I say that. I was the first tweet from the WWE Twitter account was about me.
No shit.
So that's a
Nice.
random weird fact. It was something
And now
about
they
Mark
have a
Henry beating
bajillion
me.
followers.
Bro, that's a flex.
Yeah, if you
Flex it.
scroll all the way back to tweet 1, it's about Mark Henry beating me on ECW or something back
I'm
in
gonna tell you
08.
what, I would really have ring announcers just shook if I had your career, because I would be like, you have to say this and this and this. I wrestled Jeff Jarrett's first opponent.
One time I was the Rambo Slam of the Night.
Exactly. I would just, you know, sorry, MLJ, memorize all this. That's all I'm saying.
Good luck.
He would have
pick and choose 8 of these things.
Yeah.
Oh,
all right,
man.
Colin. Thank you so much again, man. We really appreciate it, and good luck in your match on the 27th against Joseph Alexander. Dan, you have anything left for us?
No, Eric said most of it for us. We really, really genuinely appreciate you having you on here. I know Eric's going to be in the front row screaming at you whilst you're wrestling, and I will watch it come IWTV time. But again, thank you. Good luck in your match, and stay fresh, cheese bags.
Keep watching
Dudes,
wrestling.
thanks for having me.